special guest today, Mr. Andrew Bowser, aka Onyx the Fortuitous, and so many other amazing things.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Andrew, for coming on, man.
Yeah,
This is
thanks so
great.
much for having us. We'll
All
just kind of
good.
kick off like he's doing a Kickstarter campaign, which we put here on the screen. You can see where he's at right now, trying to get to that $500,000 goal. Man, it looks like you're like $4,500 away right now. It's so close.
That's wild.
Yeah, we got a little ticker up for you. So at 49.
Oh,
Yeah, we got a
nice.
ticker on the bottom here.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So let's
that's
get
great.
started, man. I got some questions for you. Um, how did this all get started?
Well, I've been doing this character for a long time, and I guess since like 2012 or 13. And I should say, I guess I should be used to saying this by now. The Kickstarter is onyxthemovie.com for anyone that wants to know. Onyxthemovie.com. So I've been doing this character since like 2012, 2013, and he's been in some viral videos and then some shorts and then a web series. But me personally, I'm a horror fan. And I've always wanted to blend this weird character into like a horror comedy scenario. And finally, this year, I just had the idea that I felt like was the right idea to pursue to write a feature script with the character. And I guess I also thought I had the creative juice to like make that push and envision that world with him. And so I wrote the script, and then halfway through writing it, I was like, you know what? The only way this is going to get made is if it's crowdfunded, just because it is in that niche of a kind of 80s throwback, like adventure horror, like Fright
Right.
Night or Gremlins even. So as I got close to the end of the script, I just realized I need to crowdfund this and start a Kickstarter. And then that's what I did. And I'm glad I finished the script prior to launching the Kickstarter, because it instilled like a lot of energy in me to make the Kickstarter work, because I loved the script so much.
Right.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah, the character's great, man.
Yeah, the
Thank
character's
you.
so fun. And it's just it's super cool. And real quick to all you guys watching, back in the film at onyxthemovie.com, I pinned the link up there at the top of the chat. So please head on over there and back his film.
Yeah.
It's definitely worth it. I jumped in. I did the backing of the VHS level.
Yeah.
Can't wait. Can't wait
That's
to see
great.
that and all the other cool stuff, man. And I probably
Yeah.
have to go maybe upgrade my backing too at some point. But
Hell yeah.
it's freaking so cool, man. And I love like your approach to it, because it's, you want a proper budget to make something this fun and this cool. And if you start to go out and find funding, that can kind of stifle your creativity and have to like,
Yeah.
not bring it back down to like what, maybe falls in line with, what they think they can sell.
Totally.
This is such a cool
Well,
way to do it.
That's why I've explained it on my YouTube channel, because people have said, I don't know, couldn't you have pitched this around town? And I've pitched enough things to know this wouldn't make sense for any company.
Right.
There's even like a really niche indie horror production company would probably still say there's too much comedy in it,
Right.
or people may not understand the character, give it more backstory or give him more context. It just, even if they had the best of intentions, it would still get a little muddy when other people's input comes into play. So the idea of crowdfunding, it is also the idea of like being able to make something that's pretty close to exactly what's in my head for the
Right.
project, for better or for worse, though. True.
Right.
I-
And they see it's the character they want right away. They're paying for your
Yeah.
film to get funded. It's not like, is this going to work? Maybe it's like these guys, they've seen your character on your channel
Totally.
and videos, so it's like they kind of know what they're getting to some form or factor.
Exactly. Right. I can feel like I'm making it for the fans, the people that are supplying their own money to see it. So it's this weird, cool relationship between the audience, like ahead of time in a weird way, which I didn't think about when I launched it, but like we did a script read halfway through. And then I realized, I was like, no pressure. It's just a script read, for my YouTube channel for fans. But then I thought, well, no, I guess it's like you're doing a script read for investors, because
Right.
the fans would be the ones saying, I like this script. Here's my money. So then like right before we went live on the script read, I did get incredibly nervous.
Right.
And I was like, I need to make sure they know the script is still being worked on and that it's going to be shorter. But it went fine. And I think it was a good like crowdfund bump in the middle of the campaign. But it is an interesting thing to think about, that the audience is already saying we want to see this, which is really cool.
Yeah, and it's the experience starts now with the movie.
Yeah.
It's not just the 2 hours. That they get at the time. It's like now's the cool thing. They're seeing what they get. I was telling Mike, said he funded some, so I was looking at that VHS. So I'm definitely gonna get on that.
Yeah.
Also,
that's one of my favorite tiers. That's one of my favorite
It's
tiers.
really cool.
It's a little sweet spot.
There's just so many things there to get.
Yeah.
But to kind of go back to what you're saying there too is like, well, that is the crowdfunding model for this stuff is just so, I feel like it's so underused right now. You get access to all these people, and it is all of us fans that really like, this is what I want to see. I want to see your vision of your character unhindered by, other people who don't understand it or care as much about it.
Yeah.
And this is such a cool, way to get to see that. I can't wait, to kind of to see how it flushes out for you.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
What are some of the tier levels that, are there any ones you kind of want to talk about that you're really excited about?
Yeah. Well, we just recently added a couple that are a little higher, and I think there might be 2 left, but I thought these were really cool. And then I'll talk about some of the ones that may be more attainable for people, but because I wouldn't be able to give to these higher tiers if I was a backer. But this has also been what's so interesting about the process. I'll do a live stream or I have like a private Facebook group for backers, and they'll give me ideas that I just wouldn't have because I don't have the kind of objective perspective on it that they do, like the external perspective. I'm on the inside. Case in point, when I launched the campaign, all the rewards were based on stuff that happens in the movie. And nobody's seen the movie yet. But I was like, you get a pin from this character and a t-shirt with this thing that happens in the movie. And immediately people in the Facebook page were like, I just want a t-shirt with Onyx's old quotes on them from the Notice Me Senpai video or the quote from this video. And I was like, oh, right. I didn't even think to do that because my mind as a creator was just in the movie. So even as and then I recalibrated and added those things to the campaign and added those tiers. But even as we've gotten further along, people's feedback on that group has been invaluable. And somebody after the script read said, what would be a cool cameo? There's 2 scenes that take place in a graveyard, and they're pretty like in-depth scenes because they're about somebody in there trying to dig up something. And then there's the whole finale takes place in a graveyard. And so in the script, it says there's gravestones everywhere. But somebody was like, you should add a tier where your name as a backer can be on one of those gravestones. And I thought that was so ingenious because I wouldn't have thought of that. But for them, when they saw the script read, they thought about it right away. And it also then, in a weird way, informed the creative because I, in my mind, hadn't planned on maybe landing on the gravestones for very long as the director when we shoot that. But then I thought, well, if I need to show their names off, we're going to need a reason to stay on the gravestones for just like a beat or 2. And then I realized, well, if the characters are digging up something and in our movie, they finally find this thing, you could assume that they've been digging in this graveyard for maybe years. Every single gravestone could be dug up. And if that's the case, you would need to spend more time on those stones because you're trying to show they've been digging up these holes for years. So that was another weird instance of like their idea made me just change the shot length in my head. But then I thought, well, you need to justify the shot length with a creative choice. So then I said, oh, well, they've been digging these holes for years. We got to show them. Anyway, I just thought that was a really cool. I didn't think about that kind of symbiotic, like cyclical relationship during this, that fans' opinions would actually inform the creative, not only on the rewards, but on the script.
Right.
And then, so we have this tombstone tier. And then outside of that, I really like that a lot of the tiers get you some original content. There's this cartoon that you get that's like a R-rated. I told the animator, make it like Cool World, but off the grid, just Cool World. So it's about me going to hell and there being this demonic gadget hack wrench character that, we hook up. And then there's like a prequel comic book that we have created. There's a theme song download that I've made that was kind of just for me because I wanted to make a theme song, like a Dream Warriors style theme song. And then there's like, posters and t-shirts and stickers and keychains and all the little collectibles. There's like a vinyl toy at a certain level. There's a mad ball, like I've called it a freak ball, but like an old school 80s mad ball of my character.
Oh yeah, I got some of those behind me.
Oh yeah, yeah. So a lot of cool, and then as we get closer to the goal, people have been saying, well, you should announce some cool stretch goals. And now I'm thinking like, yeah, what could we do for a stretch goal that would be a neat like 80s throwback? I like that a lot of the tiers are kind of throwback to stuff that I grew up on.
Right.
Obviously, like the VHSs, you know.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. You got a pretty impressive VHS collection back there.
Yeah, I used to have so many more. This is actually like a rebuilt collection because I had a 400, 500 of them, as a teenager, and I had them all in a big trunk. And I think it got thrown out by one of my family members. So this is just like what I've bought off eBay since I've kind of built out this set for Onyx to be on. So this is like the 50 kind of selects.
That's awesome.
And I just got a big box Poltergeist. It doesn't fit on the rack, but it's like one of those big boxes that has like a fold out cover and the VHS like set inside of it, like a little clamshell.
Yeah.
Right.
That's awesome.
Cool. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just talking to Mike yesterday about VHSs. I was like, I didn't realize I've been kind of out of touch with. I mean, I have like 6 or 7 VHSs that I just have had for years.
Yeah.
But VHS collecting, especially horror VHSs, are huge. I do have to ask this real fast. How do you watch? So you obviously watched. I saw Friday Night playing on your TV a while back. Are you full screen VHS, or if there's the widescreen version, does that defeat the purpose of how do you watch your VHS?
I buy off of eBay just like whatever is available, and then it's kind of a crapshoot when I pop it in. Actually, like the full screen, the image got cropped.
Right.
I like it like filling. I like it filling the whole 4:3 window.
Right.
Because I do have a couple that are like the like re-releases of the movie, even if it was just a few years later. Like I think my Halloween 2 is from a couple years later. It's not like the original VHS printing.
Right.
And yeah, when I pop those in and it has the bars, I'm kind of like, yeah, okay. I'm just as a kid, I watched them full screen and I didn't know any better,
Yeah, I'm with you. Like, and that period of time where they started to introduce the the letterbox, it was kind of like the end of VHS. Beginning
totally.
of DVD, and it was just, I don't have the same nostalgia for that. I don't really care, so I don't. I'm with you. Like, I want to see, if I'm gonna watch, I want to see that old full screen.
Presentation. And it's wild because if you watch those enough, and then I sat down to watch Fright Night on my television proper the other night, and I was like, what freaking movie is this? Like it was so pretty and vibrant and gosh, like anamorphic. It's funny to watch that. I watched Monster Squad the other day and I was like, oh my God, this is a big sweeping movie. I'm used to watching it on my TV VCR.
Right.
But
do you have like a favorite? I mean, I know Transylvania, I've heard you kind of chat about different things. Do you have kind of a favorite 80s horror, or?
I think the specifically in relationship to this project, it really is Fright Night and Night of the Creeps. And I don't get to talk about Night of the Creeps much because a lot of times I bring it up and people are like, never heard of it. But, it's from Fred Decker, who did Monster Squad. But Night of the Creeps is just like unbridled. The Onyx movie actually isn't as crazy as Night of the Creeps. It probably should be.
That's fine.
But so for this movie, Fright Night and Night of the Creeps, my all-time favorite 80s horror movie is Pumpkinhead.
Yeah.
And it's not in the same vein. It doesn't have that comedic, that edge to it that's levity, but I love Pumpkinhead. That's like,
yeah,
I'm wearing a Pumpkinhead shirt. I didn't realize.
Oh, nice.
But
yeah, the Pumpkinhead is one of my favorite monsters. Period. And also, I know they made sequels and stuff, but it's like, God, I want more Pumpkinhead. Like, I know proper more Pumpkinhead. So hopefully, this project you do get to create a Pumpkinhead for us all.
I've literally one of the stretch goals, which I don't know at what level, but that I'm going to try to, hopefully I'll have a reason to announce next week, is that there's this demon in the movie, but as I scripted it, we only see his head and it's in a nightmare sequence. And so it's kind of like, it's just coming through this like black space. It's a little dreamlike. And it's because budgetarily I knew, well, we just need prosthetics for the head and maybe even like some animatronics in the face. But I thought a stretch goal could be that we get a full body creature and the nightmare sequence becomes more active and he's stalking Onyx down the hallway and all that. And the first thought was I wrote the designer I said, would you have time to turn around like a sketch for next week if we get to a stretch goal that shows the demon full body? And he was like, yeah, just send me a reference image. And I just sent him 3 Pumpkinhead images. I was like, well, I mean, just Pumpkinhead, but I guess not, because
Right.
you got to make it your own. But I really just want it to be Pumpkinhead. If I've tried to like write the people that have the Pumpkinhead rights, but I haven't had enough clout to ever, get through to them. But I have a Pumpkinhead remake, like bullet pointed out.
Wow.
Like, oh God, I went and saw Pumpkinhead at the Draft House in LA one night, and it was like a tiki themed Pumpkinhead night. And I was like, yeah, let's do it. And I had
That's
like
awesome.
4 tiki drinks and then watched Pumpkinhead and then sat in their lobby and wrote like a 2-page outline for a
that's
Pumpkinhead
awesome.
remake.
That's amazing, man.
Yeah.
I want to go back real quick to you talking about Night of the Creeps, because it's
Yeah.
definitely one of our favorites too. And
Oof,
we're
I
doing
love
We've
it.
been
that
heavily
little,
in the office
Yeah,
lately.
yeah,
Night of the
we've
Creeps
been-
and
That's
Fright
great.
Night we've been
we're doing
Yeah.
those cut downs, the killer creatures. So our next
Yeah.
episode is Night of the Creeps. It comes
Yeah.
out on Monday.
Oh,
But
that's great. That's great.
yeah, that movie is so, for the people who don't know that film and like love 80s horror and stuff, Mike, I can never recommend that film enough.
I feel like
Yeah.
if they're gonna watch one 80s horror movie, if you're gonna give a person, say, here's the 80s horror, and I was, we were talking about the drama. There's like some drama in there too. I mean, there's everything in there, and there's the little scene with the tape player. It's like there's some kind of
Totally.
serious things, but yet some crazy. It's like the crazy, outrageous stuff mixed in
Yep.
with all that, and colors, sound, music. It's just
Oof.
it's really, and that's what the Onyx poster, kind of like in that sense, in that style, that spirit.
Yeah.
So,
I think that's exactly why I love it, that it's so absurd, but there's all of these moments of emotional grounding.
Right.
And I think when people think of 80s horror, they just think of camp and they think of things being so heightened that they're comical and there's all these stereotypes.
Yeah.
But Night of the Creeps exists in this weird crawl space where I actually still believe those characters. And obviously, like Tom Atkins' character, the cop, is really grounded and heavy
Right.
and depressed. But even the friendship between the 2 leads is really believable. And yeah, I didn't even realize until I had it on my TV the other day, the tape recorder thing. There's like elements of that in the Onyx movie. And there'd be times when I would like knowingly pay homage. I'd be like, I want to do this scene that's a
That's
reference
cool.
to Poltergeist. But then as I rewatched some of my favorites, I realized there's also just the DNA of those movies in this, because I've, marinated in them for so long. And Night of the Creeps is one of the movies that I think the Onyx movie is most like.
That's awesome.
that's great, man. Yeah, we're pumped
Yeah.
for it.
Let me ask you this, and just so as far as Night of the Creeps goes, I think you'd seen like one of the cut downs, and what we do at the end of it is we
Yeah.
kind of assign the threat level across the board. What would you think the threat, like Night of the Creeps? What is all of that stuff together? Kind of.
Yeah, we have a 1 to 5 scale on our
What
scale.
would you assign that for that?
I honestly think that movie presents the highest threat level because it has everything.
Right.
I had a friend watch it recently in my backyard. We did like a little screening and they were like, oh, so it's like an alien movie because of the intro.
Right,
And I was like, yeah. But then right after the intro, there's a serial killer. And he's like, so is it about the axe murder? And I was like, yeah, kind of. And then obviously there's the slugs, which are related to the aliens. And then it's like, there's zombies.
Right.
And he's like, so it's a zombie movie. And I'm like, it's Night of the Creeps. It's all of those things. And honestly, I would also consider like Tom Atkins' tragic backstory to be
Right.
a threat, because that's haunting him.
It's a film noir too.
Totally, and driving him crazy. I think it's the highest threat level because it's such a barrage of different
Right.
monsters and different threats.
Yeah, the drama and the horror is also pretty prevalent in Fright Night too. I hadn't watched
Yeah.
Fright Night in years, and we're doing a Fright Night one too.
That's great.
And then the little werewolf scene at the very end, it's just like
Yeah.
stays on it, and it's just like forever. And I'm just watching. I'm like, man, this is sad. Like,
Totally.
That's
I would keep those movies on my TV VCR, which is like behind me if I'm at my desk, and I would literally just like glance up, and this is how they made fun of. It's like how they used to make fun of Family Guy for coming up with jokes, in a way, like the kind of bingo. But I would look up, and I wouldn't add anything to the script that didn't fit. But if I looked up and saw like Evil Ed in Fright Night and, you know, him dying, I was like, oh, yeah, I want to have a friend that turns. And then
Right.
it's like tragic when they have to be killed because they've become a villain. Just like that aspect or that trope, I want to work into the Onyx movie. And I would just glance up and see moments from those movies and at least write them down as like, try to work in something like that. And they found their way in that way. But Fright Night, yeah, even though it opens with like the stereotypical 80s stuff of the guy being like, come on, why can't we do it?
Right.
You know, that's like, it's a little cringy,
Yeah.
but I do think they try to redeem the character over the course of the film, and they get things to be a little more complex.
Right.
I do think it would have been cool just revisiting it if the girlfriend hadn't simply become the damsel in distress. But for a lot of the movie, she is one of the heroes with
Right.
Charlie and Peter Vincent. But then, of course, at the end, she kind of becomes more the damsel in distress, and then even like a villain for a minute. But
Right.
Right.
So real fast, just if you guys are just joining us, Andrew here is a filmmaker with a Kickstarter campaign to fund his new film. Somebody asked in the chat, is it animation or live action, Andrew?
it's live action, and it is. But you know, it's so funny. There's a nightmare sequence, and somebody said the other night that the nightmare sequence should be partially animated.
Oh, that'd be fun.
And that cracked me up. It may be too big of a jump for the. Well, now we're close to our goal, so I'm already talking about like a sequel. But I think if you made a sequel to this movie, you could get crazier, and there could be sequences that are like heavy metal, or, you know, in a sequel, I'd love to get a little crazier with the creatures, and maybe there's like a Gremlins aspect of something being unleashed in this mansion that they're all in. But the first one is live action. There's no animation planned, even though over the years I've had a lot of like Onyx animated stuff. And I think we may even release an animated promo next week, because a buddy of mine said he'd make
animated credit sequence at the beginning, like
Oh, totally.
Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, you know, kind of thing.
Totally. That actually, I think, is in my notes. I wrote down animated titles, question mark, because that is in so many great 80s movies. And the director, Savage Steve Holland, the guy that did like One Crazy Summer, I think, but then he also was the creator of Eek the Cat. Like his movies always had these crazy animated sequences. That's a great idea. Maybe the end titles can be like, 80s animated. Ugh, that'd be I'm just trying to build like my perfect movie.
Yeah, that's amazing, man.
So you don't mind, Andrew, tell us a little bit about your background in filmmaking and kind of being a creative, you know?
Yeah. Well, I grew up outside Washington, D.C. I'm from Maryland originally, and I grew up as like a kid actor, but in that region. Like I'd audition for stuff in New York because it was just a train ride away. But I was just like a kid actor in DC doing plays, playing Tiny Tim at the Ford's Theater and stuff like that. And then when I got into high school, I started writing and taking photography classes. And I think over the course of my high school years, that stuff blended together. And I also really hated auditioning as a kid actor because I could go on and on about this, and every actor knows it, and every actor gets better at dealing with it. And I just couldn't. But, you know, you practice something and you walk into an audition, and as a kid, you're like, okay, I'd memorize. I was a really good memorizer, and I'd walk in and be off book, and they'd be like, what scene do you have? And I'd be like, oh, scene 3. They're like, we're not reading scene 3. No, we're reading this. And then they give you it cold, and you're just like, why did I stay up? You know, I hated that feeling. I hated that feeling of getting the rug pulled out from under me. And basically like not being able to control what I know I could do, like with whatever I had practiced or whatever talent I might have, you've got to be able to cultivate that. You know, you're not just talented in any scenario. You're talented if like the train's on the tracks.
Right.
And so I hated that I could look like I failed, that I could be wrong and just flounder. And I remember practicing for a musical audition, and I told the accompanist what key to play it in, which is so important because if you're singing like Where is Love from Oliver, and it's like, where, and it gets all high. I told him like, this is the key. You know, I'm not a soprano, even though I'm like 9 years old. And then he'd start playing it too high. And then I'd just be locked in knowing that as that song progressed, I was going to go out of my range, botch the audition. And there was some audition I had as a kid, and I walked out of there and I was just like, I don't know if I had these words in my head, but I was like, I'm going to be a director. I can't be at the mercy of all of these other people and all these other factors. So I started writing and directing in high school, and then I went to film school at the School of Visual Arts in New York, and absolutely loved it, but ran out of money, couldn't finish it. I went there for 2 years before I had to move back to Maryland, but then just started directing stuff for local bands, like music videos. I took the camera from my church. Actually, I'd like shoot church videos for them, and then I would shoot music videos with the bands, and then that led to short films, and eventually one of those shorts just kind of gave me the courage to move to LA. And I've been in LA since like 2006 or 2007, and primarily worked as a casting editor, editing casting tapes for like Real Housewives of Beverly Hills and Wipeout and game shows. And that's when I started shooting my own comedy stuff, though, because I'd watch these people that auditioned for these shows, and there was like so much humor in these audition tapes, unintentional humor.
Right.
And so at some point I started building out characters kind of based on some of these personalities. And I don't think any of those specifically led to Onyx, but the vibe of like, I cut casting tapes for that MTV show Parental Control, which was like teens going out on a date and the parents watching, and it was all fake. Like the casting director would be telling these teens to just make up stuff.
Right.
But they'd still be so nervous. And I do remember one audition was this guy who kind of was dressed like Onyx, and the casting director said, "Do you have any special skills?" And he was like, "Well, yeah, I mean, I'm pretty good dancer, and like I can pop and lock." And she was like, "Okay, would you show us?" And he starts to dance, but he's wearing a lav mic, and it's getting pulled by the chains on his pants. And it's just that awkward, like him breathing and chains clacking against the. And I think that's partially where Onyx came from, was this guy just kind of losing it in this audition. Anyway, then I made the first Onyx video and kept making comedy content, started working for a place called Nerdist for 6 years. And at that point I directed all their comedy content, and somewhere in all that made like 3 really, really small features that they're, in most people's eyes, they're not even real features because they're not traditionally shot. One's on a GoPro, one's found footage, horror comedy, and then one's like a mockumentary. So another reason behind wanting to make this is like, I want to shoot a traditional feature. I've made 3, but they're all experimental, and it's like,
where
in a way they just
where are those at? Like, can people watch them and like? Yeah,
I think you can rent. The first one is called The Mother of Invention, and I think that's on Amazon to rent. I think you can just rent that, and on iTunes. And there's some really fun people in it, like Dee Wallace from Cujo and E.T. and Jimmy Simpson from It's Always Sunny and Westworld. And then I made a movie called Jimmy Tupper versus the Goatman of Bowie, and that was a horror comedy found footage. It cost like $500, but it got into South by Southwest in like 2010. But that was a part of really bolstering my confidence in the idea that even if you make something for like next to nothing, it is possible it will get seen. And then I made a movie called Worm in 2013 that was all shot on a GoPro, and that's just on my YouTube channel because we did not find distribution for it.
Is that one horror related or?
No, that one's total like neo noir. It's about a guy in Oklahoma that gets framed for a crime, and the whole movie's told with the GoPro mounted on him, like those that show Fear on MTV.
Right.
And so it's all told from that Snoricam perspective. So it's like this chase movie, and we blocked it all out in this small town in Oklahoma, and we ran it like a play. And the whole thing is awesome. It's just 2 takes long. So there's one edit in the middle. The character jumps off a bridge, and when he hits the water, we cut, because then we had to take the second half as its own like act.
So you shot that, like you shoot that just in a couple of days then? I mean, I understand the blocking took a long time, but.
Yeah, I think I went to Oklahoma thinking I'd be there for like a month, and I wound up being there for over 3 months because rehearsing it took a lot longer. And we had issues with the GoPro. The GoPro kept overheating, and sound was a nightmare because I had to like wear a mic, but then I also had to take that mic off and jump in the water and then find somewhere how to get it back on. There was all this stuff that just the rehearsing time kept getting extended and dialing in all those details. So when it finally came time to shoot that project, we literally did it in one day, and we only did it once, and that's the one that we got. Like this,
Oh,
it
wow.
never worked more than once. We all the times up to that one run failed, and then we got that one run, and that was it. And
That's awesome, man.
it is the movie that's up on my
That's
YouTube
great,
channel
man.
now. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll have to check it out. Look forward to it. Maybe even the horror one. Have to find out where who has your distribution on that. It'd be fun to put that up on
Yeah.
the channel.
Oh yeah, totally. I think The Orchard has Jimmy Tupper versus the Goat Man of Bowie.
Okay.
But I wouldn't know what my deal is with them and how long it lasts. I haven't looked at that stuff in so long. But yeah, and I think they actually had it up for free for a while, but I think it's now available to rent.
Cool. Yeah, that's awesome. So really, before Onyx, before this movie that we're getting made now, what was the biggest budget that you got to work with on your other 3 films?
So on those movies, I mean, they probably didn't cost more than, I think the Mother Invention cost. I think they almost all costed. Well, Jimmy Tupper versus the Goat Man of Bowie literally cost $500.
Wow.
I don't even think we ever did like a new sound mix or anything after the fact that bumped it. I think it was, maybe a few thousand after it went to, once we got into South by, maybe we dumped some money into a sound mix, but it was definitely like in the $500 to $2,000 range. The Mother of Invention before that, though, I think we did spend like $30,000.
Okay.
And it's funny because I think that was before Kickstarter. So we just did like a PayPal donation link. And we set up our own Kickstarter in essence. We just had a web, one page that said, give here. And I think we got some money through that page and then some money from like friends and family. I'd go into like, literally would go into like restaurants just cold and be like, can I talk to your manager? And I'd be like, so this is a franchise. So you own this franchise. You're pretty successful. Do you want to invest in a movie? Just cold ask people. And then I think, and then Worm cost about 20 as well. I think to get it shot, it was like $5,000 to $7,000. And then we had a big sound, like the sound work on that was like $9,000 or something.
Oh, wow.
And then color on that was like a couple $1,000. Yeah. It's wild when the finishing costs more than the production, but Worm was just that type of movie where the production was so small and rough, but then you've got this like, not to disparage it, but you've almost got a lump of coal that you then have to spend money turning into, something shiny.
Right.
Yeah.
But that's amazing to see you get. Even $30,000. We're independent filmmakers too, Justin and I.
Yeah.
It's I still think I've not shot anything or done anything with the type of budget that you're going to get to work with here, but that is exciting, and I feel like it helps us exercise our muscles to have to work under such tight constraints that once you get that point, if you have the money, you have the resources, your imagination is kind of, like it
totally.
And that's exciting, man.
And I think the biggest thing about making small projects is to train your brain. I call it, and a friend of mine, a producer I used to work with, called it getting scrambled eggs. It's to train your brain to push past getting scrambled eggs, because on any shoot, almost any shoot, there's that moment where you're like, oh wait, are we going to make our day? Are we out of time?
Right.
And if you're like less experienced, your brain just gets scrambled. You can't see straight, and you can't make the decisions that would actually solve the problem and help you make your day. And I've seen people have that. I was on a set once of a horror movie that was like fully financed, and the director was getting scrambled eggs. And the producer had to pull him outside. And he's like, what's going on, dude? And he's like, I don't know. It's just like these night shoots. And like, sun's coming up, but like, we still have like 3 setups. And I'm just like, and he was losing it.
Right.
And I was sitting there as like a guest, just watching him. And I was like, I know anybody can get in those situations, but I was thinking, why isn't this guy producer financing one of my movies? I haven't had a freak out like that since like 2003. I remember shooting a music video, my second music video for this band on was it Equal Vision? Maybe they were on Equal Vision, but it was like a punk label and tiny budget. And I just was so new. I just didn't plan my day right, and we ran out of time. And yeah, there were issues, like somebody flooded the toilet in the house, and there were setbacks that were unforeseen, but I couldn't, pivot and get it done. And I had a full-fledged panic attack, not in front of anyone, but I went up to the bathroom of the house we were shooting in, and I just shut the door. And I remember just hoping that the Falcor from Neverending Story would come and take me away. I was like, you got to get me out of here, dude. I can't stomach this. Luckily, then we got an extension from the record label. We got a day added and we got the shots. But I told myself in that moment, I was like, I can't ever be back in this place. And so making those smaller projects and all the stuff I shot at Nerdist, which eventually led to like bigger budget stuff. Like at Nerdist, we did have some ad campaigns where the budget for our branded videos were like $100,000 budgets or more. And so that helped me, because then you could feel the pressure of this brand, like Warner Brothers Games is here making sure I shoot this Hitman promo the right way. And that's a different kind of pressure. But I think those smaller projects are good to push you past that place where you get so panicked you can't see straight. Because when you hit those moments, I worked with a DP. I mean, this is a tangent, but I worked with a DP on a project who was just like a couple years kind of behind me in experience. And I remember seeing him. He got to a point during our day where he just thought we weren't going to make it. We'd never worked together. He didn't know that I shoot to edit. Like, I get the takes that I need, especially if it's a sketch or a one-day shoot. I mean, I'll get a close-up of somebody saying one line, and he's like, you don't want to cover that whole scene? And I'm like, nope, we don't need to, because I also edit. And then I was acting in this sketch, and this was actually a branded sketch for the Predator, the most recent Predator movie, and which I think is that Fox? I think it was Fox. So there were like Fox reps there. And this DP, I can just tell he just didn't think we were going to make it. So he started to clock out. He started to move slower, and he started to like have his guys do less, because he thought like a madman was running the show, because I'm in the thing and I'm getting killed by the Predator, and then I'm running behind the camera and I'm calling action. And I won't ever forget that we made our day, and the look on his face was like, I think he understood how much he messed up by disengaging like he had, and not trusting the people that maybe had done this many, many times before. And I didn't like attempt to teach him a lesson, but I walked away from that thinking, I hope that guy internally took that in and realized that you can't abandon your director like that, you know?
No, that's a terrible thing.
Yeah. And the DP and the director need to be in the trenches solving those problems. Anyway, that's a tangent, but the whole point is Worm fried my brain, and I don't think my brain can be fried again, because that movie, like the pressure of that was like, you have one take, one day, you know, in 110-degree Oklahoma.
Yeah, and that's such a value there as a growing as a filmmaker and an artist, is like having the ability to have those freakouts when not everything in the world is on the line.
Exactly.
You know, getting the confidence in yourself to tell a story, to know what you do. Like you said, you know, because one of the things of filmmaking is like get coverage. You know, everyone wants to shoot, which I did early on. Like I just like, okay, let's spend 10 days getting coverage. But, you know, then you're missing out on performances and not getting things that matter the most.
Totally.
And then it's cool.
Have you watched the Monster Squad documentary?
No.
I still have not, and I'm dying to.
You should watch it, because there's some interesting stuff about Fred Decker, like not really knowing how to cover a scene. The way that he needed to for some of the like action sequences with the monsters and everybody interacting, like 7 or 8 characters. And yeah, he learned a really early lesson in the production of that film, and he talks about it in the doc, where he looked at the dailies, and I forget who it was that told him, but somebody said like, you're not getting everything you need. And he was like, okay. And he kind of pivoted and made his coverage plan different for the following days. And then it really started to fit together. But he was learning that lesson on the set of that Universal monster movie, which would freak me out.
Right.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Such a great film too.
So
yeah, it's great. It looks so good.
Yeah.
Having those like responsibilities, you know, especially now with the obviously as a filmmaker is one thing, but now you got the Kickstarter campaign. You have any help through this whole process, or is it, you know, how are you going to start overseeing that during the filmmaking of it?
Yeah, I have had help. And I think if there's anybody that is going to consider starting a Kickstarter, I would tell them to have like a real team in place. I kind of built a team over the course of the Kickstarter out of necessity. I had a person write me who was just a part of the Facebook group, and say, it's like, I mean, yeah, but I can just make some stuff. It's fine. And then he would send me graphics that he made that were like, hey, let's try to get to this number by Friday. And his stuff, I'm not a graphic designer, you know, I'm not an illustrator. And his stuff was great. And he's now been making graphics for the entire run of the campaign.
That's awesome.
I have somebody who's helping me manage the campaign, a woman named Ani, who is like, that's just been helping farm out the information to like cool horror blogs and sites. And then this is wild to think as like an indie filmmaker who makes stuff in his garage, but I actually got a proper assistant too.
Nice.
That's great.
Because the work that I have as a freelance producer, and then the work of this Kickstarter, I was just, I mean, the amount of plates that were spinning was unmanageable. And to have somebody come in, a friend of mine who works in production wrote me, and she was like, I think you need an assistant. And I was like, I do, but it's weird to ask for that when you're just like an indie filmmaker and you're not, you know, somewhere working on a studio film, but it has helped immensely. And then I have editors that help me edit a lot of the content that I put out to promote the campaign. Two editors, Brian and Laura. And then I still edit, you know, maybe half of what goes up, shoot and edit it here in my garage. But it really takes like a little squad like that to pull it off, because it also just helps that other people are coming up with ideas. This guy, Tony, that's been making the graphics, like made a little promo that the character in the movie works at a place called Marty's Meat Hut. And he made a little promo. He shot in his house, like a burger and nuggets and he printed out the logo onto like paper that would be wrapped in wrapping fast food. And he shot a promo that's like a fake Marty's Meat Hut commercial. And he was like, I figured you could use this. And I'm like, yeah, dude, that's great.
That's awesome.
Like, yeah, I wouldn't have had that idea.
That's so cool. The lady you were speaking about is kind of helping you with the campaign. Is that because what I've kind of learned recently from other filmmakers, different people that are doing Kickstarter? I mean, there's kind of like specialists out there that specialize in helping you navigate a Kickstarter campaign. Is that kind of what that was?
No, so she was somebody like me who had never run a campaign like this, but she was present. I took like a few meetings with someone that consults for crowdfunding. And that's another thing I'd recommend. There's this guy's name specifically was, I mean, if you type in like crowdfunding expert Sebastian, you'll find him on YouTube. And I want to make sure that I'm right about his name. But I took a let me make sure that's his name. I feel like it might not be. I just hired him to consult with me twice leading up to the launch of the campaign. And some of his ideas early on were, his name, Salvador, not Sebastian. If you look up Salvador crowdfunding, I had 2 meetings with him. And in those 2 meetings, they were each an hour long, he gave me some really good insight in what to do pre-launch and what to do in the first few weeks of launch. And then once we were up and running, I found that just listening to the people commenting on the page and getting as much feedback as possible then can kind of help you steer the ship. Right. Not that you don't still need those experts, because you do, but if you can't afford to have somebody like truly consult the entire time, just listen to the people commenting. I mean, people will say, you know, I don't know why you don't have a tier like this. And then I'd be like, you're right. And then I'd make that tier and 200 new backers would show up, because that was a hole in the campaign that I just hadn't seen.
Right.
And so it just requires a lot of listening and, you know, a lot of time, because I quit one of my jobs to focus on the Kickstarter campaign. I had a full-time job as a producer for a digital kind of nerdy company similar to my old job at Nerdist. And I had to quit it because I was like, this Kickstarter is going to take all of my headspace up. And so then I actually also, though, got in touch with somebody at Kickstarter in their film department, and they were willing to just kind of weigh in on my campaign every week or 2.
Oh, that's cool.
And yeah, and I don't know that that's afforded to everybody, because it was a connection that was made because of a company I used to work for, a horror company I used to work for. They made this connection. And so I was incredibly privileged to be connected to the film department there, but they might be very accessible. I don't know, but they were able to weigh in and say, you know what, coming up on the halfway point, you might want to think about this, or, hey, as you get closer to 400, think about this. And then I just talked to like 2 other filmmakers that had run successful campaigns. One, that horror comedy Dude Bro Party Massacre 3. I don't know if you've ever seen that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, it's great. So I talked to those guys, and they gave me great advice too.
And that's what I think so interesting about the crowdfunding and Kickstarter. I think that to the onlooker, it seems like it's just like you get a really good idea and you kind of put it up there and the world just wants it, but it's a lot
Right.
of work. Like, what do you think hours wise that you've put like weekly, and how has that ramped up and changed since before and during?
I mean, without exaggeration, my days have been like 19-hour days. And I've been going to sleep for 3 or 4 hours and just getting back up. And not that full 19 won't be on the Kickstarter because I do have other jobs.
Sure.
But I mean, at least 12 of it is the Kickstarter. It's like, it's a full 10 or 12 hours a day. If I'm not making content and editing the content, then I am ideating what to do next, or I'm responding to comments, or I'm giving updates, sending out email blasts. And I think what I didn't understand, and I think every project is going to be different, but part of me thought, I'm guilty of thinking, I remember telling a friend, hey, we were writing a script together. And I was like, as soon as I launch this Kickstarter, we can get back to working on that other script, because the Kickstarter is going to be kind of like set it and forget it. I mean, what an insane thought to have. I think I thought that the character had been on the internet for long enough that maybe the launch would just bring in enough attention, but it just doesn't work that way. I mean, case in point, like my character has a TikTok that has 780,000 followers.
Oh, wow.
I thought like 1 or 2 TikToks and I'm funded.
Yeah.
But no, I made TikToks every other day talking about the Kickstarter, and it did not amount to backers. And so every day you're like trying to solve a different problem. And what might work one day, going live on YouTube, helps a lot. I try to go live on my channel frequently, but then maybe one day doing a Twitch watch along is what would help. And then doing an AMA is what would help. Like, you're constantly trying to like remember, well, what have I not done? And what worked last week that I could try to replicate? But then sometimes what you did last week doesn't work a second time. But then finally this week, one of my TikToks talking about the Kickstarter did get some views and did start to amount to backers. And I don't know what happened. I think maybe it was because we were getting closer to the goal, that now all of a sudden talking about it, when people went to the website and saw that we were close, they were enthused to give. But then I also did, the character is known for being spliced into newscasts, like real newscasts. And I did one of those videos, but at the end, he basically breaks and he looks toward like a cinematic camera and just says, I've been making these videos for a while now. It's time to make a movie. And he starts pitching the movie. And that did well on Facebook. But that's the other thing. It didn't do well on YouTube. And I was like, fudge. It's not going to, I thought it was going to be really good promo for this final week. But then I put it on Facebook and it got picked up and it's got like 500,000 views.
Oh, wow.
So you just have to keep thinking about like, what angle have I not tackled today? Every day is like, I have to find $10,000 today. What can I do to find $10,000 in one day?
Which sounds so impossible. But it's, and even with you, I mean, you have this really cool, unique brand that does have this massive, massive following, and there's still so many challenges. But it's just cool to see you overcome them and stay aware throughout, not give up.
And anybody that's thinking of doing a Kickstarter, know that like no one day kills the campaign. I mean, I had days when I was talking to a buddy and I was like, I think today was the day the campaign died. And he was like, well, man, just keep your head up, because then there's a day 2 days later that brings in 20 grand. And all of a sudden that dead day doesn't matter. So it's hard to not get overwhelmed by those like moments that feel like failures. But I mean, who would have guessed toward the end of the campaign yesterday, I think we had the biggest day of the entire campaign.
Yeah, we were watching along right when you're about to hit 400 like a day ago.
Yeah.
Or 2 days ago now. And then all of a sudden we're almost to 500 now, which is insane and amazing.
Yeah. And so you just really don't know. And then my buddy that told me to keep my head up, he called me yesterday and he was like, I didn't want to say this at the time, but I actually was thinking, yeah, dude, it's not going to happen. And he was like, I didn't want to tell you that. And I said, it wouldn't have mattered. I was like, you could have told me that. I would have kept going. But
Right.
you just have to, there's ebbs and flows to it. And you never know when you'll hit on the idea that'll expose your campaign in the right way to the right people. So you just have to keep hacking.
And it's kind of a snowball effect, right? I mean, even with the ups and downs, it's just like it grows.
Yeah.
And then once it hits a spot, it kind of keeps, exponential growth.
That's what people say. And they've said the final week usually brings in a lot. And I'm curious. I mean, because we're almost at our goal. My next curiosity is like, well, so I guess the psychology of wanting to give after we've reached the goal, I don't quite understand, but it's been explained to me. It's like, because once the goal's met, now the movie is happening. So the product is being created. Now anybody that gives, there's less risk because they are kind of just buying in. It's not the ground floor. They're just like, oh, like case in point, one of our tiers is for $10,000. You're an executive producer and you get to come to set for 3 days. You get to have a cameo in the movie. You get, all the crew swag and all the rewards that everybody else gets up to that point. And that tier at the ground floor may seem kind of silly because it's like, well, 10 grand to be an executive producer in what, dude? You've got 50 grand so far. But now all of a sudden, if we hit 500, that $10,000 will literally mean you're an executive producer on a feature, a small feature, but a feature nonetheless. Right. So now all of a sudden that has more value. So I'm trying to wrap my mind around that, like what kind of stretch goals would make sense for people and all that. And which is a good problem to have.
Right. Yeah. There's I see certain Kickstarters that have already been successful. I go to and I see I feel like I missed the boat. So there's that extra thing of like, once it's successful, once it reaches its goal, there's those people that are like, man, did I miss it? And so there's a whole different appeal, to it at that point. Another appeal.
Totally.
Yeah, and you have a confidence too once you see. Like I know I've done it early on when Kickstarter started. I used to give to a lot more things that I never got anything for. But then like you get to the point where you're like, oh, this is really cool, but I don't know if I want. And once you see it's funded, then there is that little bit of like, especially like with what you're doing, I love obviously horror collectibles and all these kinds of things. And I love this type of thing. And so now it's like, I don't know if when this is done, if the VHS is available, I don't know, like I have to get this now so that I know I get it. And then I'm really motivated to buy.
You just reached 498,000 and I'm watching the ticker on here.
So man.
Yeah, I just bumped up 498, 118.
So just, and we've been talking about it for almost an hour now, but just to explain to some of the audience, just some of the points of what they would get and kind of a little summary about the whole thing again.
Yep. Yeah. So, I mean, the biggest takeaway for me from this campaign is that it's an 80s throwback horror comedy that we don't really get anymore. And so that's what's key for me, I feel like, to communicate to horror fans, that it is in that Fright Night, Gremlins, Night of the Creeps vein, where now if we get like a super silly horror comedy, it's more of like a parody, or it's not attempting to be grounded. It's just kind of grindhousey, and it might be stylistically a throwback, but the heart isn't really there, or the warmth. Whereas there's a lot of warmth in those movies. Like you talk about the Friends and Night of the Creeps. So I'm trying to make something that feels like those movies. And so it's called Onyx the Fortuitous and the Talisman of Souls. It's about a guy that gets invited to a big scary mansion because he won a contest as a Satanist to take part in a really big ritual that he thinks is going to give him immortality. But in actuality, the leader of this ritual wants to trap their souls in a talisman so that he can gain power in hell and over earth. And so the rewards go from like the poster that you see behind me, not the Transylvania 65000 poster, that poster, Jesus, I can never figure it out. 8x10 signed by Onyx, the character, stickers, t-shirts that were designed specifically for the film, all the way up to copies of the movie on VHS, a slime green VHS, or just a digital link, or the film on Blu-ray with some special features. Then as you get further up, you get like custom content. My character welcoming you to the meat hut as if you're an employee, a coworker of his. And I'm going to like shoot a proper little, I'm going to shoot these in like a meat hut uniform and say like, oh, welcome, you're going to do great here and all this stuff. You get like a mad ball at a certain level, a vinyl toy at a certain level. all the way up to you can become an associate producer and just get access to like behind the scenes, like a private Instagram account that'll be running the whole time of our production.
That's gonna be awesome.
And like, yeah, that to me, I was like, that's because we're going to update that all the time. It's just like you have an experience along with us, and it'll be this private account that only people at that tier are approved to be followers of. And then you get the script at that level, so you can actually read the script, and it'll be signed by the cast, and you get a Zoom hangout with us on the set. There's a great tier that I was excited to buy, which is Onyx has recorded audio commentaries like riff tracks for existing movies. So he recorded an audio commentary for The Crow, for Pumpkinhead, and for Gremlins 2. So there's a certain tier where you can download one of those audio commentaries and just
that's Onyx doing the commentary.
And it's Onyx.
Oh,
the whole
amazing.
time. I literally just like sat here with my mic and just watched Gremlins 2. And I was just like, oh, the vegetable gremlin's actually my favorite because I like his little goatee made of carrots. And that's like for an hour and a half. So
I gotta, I saw that tier and I don't know why, it probably says it, but I was picturing it, you doing the commentary, which is cool too.
Yeah.
But man, it's just even cooler to think that. That's so fun.
That's cool.
I do want to say that, like, the one thing that really impressed me about your campaign was that your tiers are worth the money by like a long shot. And that's a lot of times you see with these campaigns, it's like, for $50, you get a shout out and, a screener, which is fine.
Yeah.
But it's like, I'll want to go into the one that I did because I just pulled it up. Like, I took the retro video tier. And so for this tier, I get a Slime Green VHS copy of the movie.
Yeah.
I would have paid $80 for that by itself. The online screener of the movie.
Yeah.
A t-shirt, I get to pick between the Onyx quote, a Senpai tee, a keychain and sticker, a signed 11x14 poster, a signed 8x10, name in the credits. That's, I would pay $250 for that. So you guys you've given an amazing amount of value for what you ask, and that's huge, man. That's fantastic.
I appreciate it. I tried to build them out that way. I spent so much time working on the tiers, and then I would show how I had built them out, and I'd post it in the Facebook group, and people would give me feedback. And it was a fine line because it is hard for some people to understand. It's not just selling merch. You're running a fundraiser, so it all has to still make the production enough money to be worth it. I can't just sell t-shirts straight away and say $20 for a t-shirt, because then we'd make no money. There'd be no movie.
Right.
So luckily my friend Ani that's been helping me run it, we sat down and we really calculated every tier and just looked at the margin, and we tried to get it as close to we could, to where we would start to lose money on it. We were like, let's get it to where it's like almost unreasonable, but still makes us enough money to go into the film production, but still give them something that's like really tangible and feels worth it. And that's what I would want. Like as a backer, I'd want, and I like that they're each really unique. A lot of people have said, I wish I could customize and take one thing from this and one thing from that, but that just gets so convoluted on Kickstarter, because then you're going to have like 30 tiers and they're all kind of the variations of the same stuff. I tried to structure it where, you're not going to get this unique thing unless you bump up to that tier.
Right.
But it takes a lot of planning. You got to keep an eye on the shipping. Even down to like, so what size poster do people get? Oh my gosh. What size poster do people get? What size poster tube? What's the cost of that poster tube? But like we announced a stretch goal today, because we are getting close to the goal, that basically is it's like this really awesome print of illustrated Onyxes over the years, like different evolutions of him. And so technically that doesn't cost a lot to, I've already paid for the design, that I didn't count that in the cost. I paid for the design. Printing those isn't that expensive, and we already have poster tubes for most backers because of the poster that we're giving out. So adding a print wouldn't really cost the campaign much more money. So that's like the way you have to think, is how can we, but yet the art is so unique and specific, it still has value. And I tried to think in that way too. Like if the things have different artists involved, that's why I get excited.
Right.
Like,
I'm the same way.
Yeah. I want to see this poster, and I want to see this toy that's designed by a guy named Sjogren, because his stuff's amazing. And that excited me too, building out the tiers in a way that like, highlighted other artists. The animator that did the little 90-second animation, the animated short, is this YouTuber that I just love. His name's Joey Souza. He does super weird stuff. So yeah, I tried to make them unique without them costing the campaign too much money to where it was illogical.
Well, on your VHS, I do have to ask this. You're going to are you doing a crop pan and scan? You going to do?
I mean, that's exactly, I had that thought, because when I've made VHSs before, that I go to this place in Burbank, you just give them like a ProRes QuickTime file, and they'll just burn it off to VHS, as many as you give that. You supply the media, like you show up with your box of tapes and they run them off. And they asked me that last time, and last time I did this, I did choose to have it letterboxed, but I think this time around, I guess the only thing isn't that it won't actually go through a process of pan and scan. I would hate if it lost too much of the image. But yeah, the collector in me wants it to be just full screen.
Right,
It'll probably wind up being letterboxed for the sake of
that
like
makes
preserving
sense.
the image. Yeah. Yeah.
What is, like, now with the way, technology is advanced, what's the most you can put on a VHS? Is it still limited to like a couple hours, or does that change?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think the tapes that I had produced last time, you could put like up to 4 hours, I think. Yeah, it's so weird. I used to have all of that. I used to like record hours and hours of just like Tales from the Crypt. And I'd know like at what speed, to set it to get
that
the most
extended
out of
play
it.
was like a 6 hour. You could put 6 hours on extended play, but the quality was like low.
Totally.
The standard rate, the standard was like 2 hours, I think, is what it was. Like
Yeah. I used to record the Simpsons reruns, and I'd get on the 6 hour setting. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome, man.
So you're at 498, 419 right now.
Oh man, that's wild.
6,000 backers.
Man, I have up on my wall over there like what our weekly goals were, and I remember looking up at the first week's goal, which I think was 70 grand, and just thinking like that was insane. Just like to get to 70, I just took it week by week, but I just remember thinking, wow, 70 grand in 1 week, yikes. But then the next week was 120, and then the next week was, I think, 200. Anyway, it's crazy to see those numbers now. They felt like there was a time when it felt like that I wouldn't see those numbers.
Right. You're kind of embarking on a fun journey, but it seemed like, kind of insurmountable, I would imagine. From the beginning.
And definitely somebody suggested, and this was like one of the experts, somebody suggested, look, if you get to your halfway point and you haven't hit 250, if you haven't hit your halfway goal at your halfway point in the campaign, you may want to consider pulling the plug.
Really?
And I was like, okay. Yeah. I was like, why would you even tell me that? Reading, but it did light a fire under me that was just like, I refuse to not, every week I've been like, I refuse to not hit the weekly goal. Right. And it makes you come up with these incentives of like, hey, for 24 hours, any backer that ups their pledge by $20 gets this pin. I've been saying fight the lull because everybody warned me against the mid-campaign lull. So I made this like Ghostbuster style. I didn't make it. This amazing designer named Mike made it. But it's like Onyx in the Ghostbusters, logo, and it says fight the lull, and he's coming out of the logo. And so you come up with stuff like that to get over these little humps. And maybe that's why that person told me you might want to pull the plug soon, because it triggered that response in me. Right. It's like, no, we're going to fight the lull.
Would there be a reason to pull the plug? I mean, I guess unless you had a $10,000 at 30 days and then you're just like, this is never.
Right. In my mind, I think a lot of people's thinking was it was a matter of like, maybe all the juice is out of the squeeze. Right. If you get to 200, 210, and despite your best efforts, you're not seeing increases, your community and your reach might be tapped out. And if that's the case, they were saying, maybe pull the plug, relaunch in a few weeks at a lower goal. And maybe even say, well, I'm not making a feature. I'm making I'm making a 3-episode web series, or I'm just going to make a really great short that kind of shows this concept as a proof of concept. But my thing is like, I've made 30 proof of concepts. I've made 100 shorts. I've made all the viral videos either on my own or at Nerdist. And I was like, this is about pushing for a feature. That's like the mission. But yeah, with that said, if I was going into this final week and I was in like the 200s, I may be freaking out and just pull the plug. But I don't know. You never know, because people
Sure.
tell me that a lot comes in at the end. So maybe I would have stuck it out. I don't know.
Well, man, I hope a lot does come in at the end for you guys. I'd love to see you. Yeah,
I hope so.
I hope you have the terrible challenge of figuring out how to do cooler shit to your film. You know.
Yeah.
Exactly. I know the next stretch goal. So the first stretch goal is that people get that art print that I was talking about, the evolutions of Onyx. If we get to 515, everybody will get a copy of that art print.
Oh, cool.
At 525, if there's a world where we get to 525, I, as Onyx, am going to get a tattoo of the crow because Onyx loves the crow. And I just thought, like, it's a stretch goal that almost means nothing, but at the same time, for fans and for the character, it means a lot. Like, I'm going to literally get a tattoo of the crow, and it's going to be designed by Onyx, so it's going to look bad. So I'm like committing. I drew a picture of the crow a while ago as Onyx on a TikTok, and I took a picture of it, and I'm like, that's the tattoo. So I'm going to try to come up with fun stuff like that. That's like,
and then
putting me in bad situations.
Seeing more of the monster, right, is one of the things you mentioned earlier.
Totally. I'm going to try to, I'm going to have that illustration done over the weekend. Hopefully, I think at 550, if we could get to 550, we're going to say we'll get a full creature suit for this demon Abaddon, who was originally only going to appear as like a floating head.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And to bring it all back, I don't know that he would be the performer in the suit, but the company that is on board to do the creature effects is Studio ADI. And Studio ADI is owned by Tom Woodruff Jr. and Alec Gillis. And Tom Woodruff Jr. is Pumpkinhead. He's the man in the suit. And he's Gillman from Monster Squad.
Oh,
and
wow.
So part of me was like, I don't know if Tom's up for doing creature work anymore, but if he is, have him in the suit for Abaddon. And then, I mean, at that point, I could leave LA, because then it's like, I got Pumpkinhead in my movie in a demon creature suit. It's like, call it a day at that point.
That is incredible. So was he was a creature actor too, but does he do special effects as well?
Yeah. So he was a practical effects guy that came up under Stan Winston and learned from him and many of the other masters, and then started performing as well. He said it kind of all blended at the same time, that like as a kid, when you're practicing doing those makeups, you're doing it on yourself. Right. And, you're putting hair on your hands and running around your neighborhood like the Wolf Man. And he just said it just naturally evolved, and he was always athletic. So when it got to the point where he was working on bigger projects that would require people on stilts or being in bodysuits for 8 hours a day, he kind of was the guy that had the stamina. So he volunteered, and I think he told Stan really early on, I want to be Pumpkinhead, in the Pumpkinhead movie. And Stan was like, okay. And so he's the guy in the suit. And he talks about Gillman and how, like, he had one moment of panic. I think it was something like, oh yeah, they had to glue the head on. I think the seams between the head and the suit had to be glued, because whatever like way they had of keeping them tethered to the suit wasn't working, or he was going to get submerged in water. And I don't know, it needed to be more secure. So they had to glue him in. So they were like, you're going to be glued in for a couple hours. There's no getting out of this. So be ready. And he had like a quick moment of panic. It made me think of like Jack in Lost, when he's like, you let the fear in for 4 seconds or whatever. He's like, he had a quick moment of panic where he was like, oh God. And then he was like, okay, glue me in. And then glued him in, and he's just in this thing for hours. Crazy. So yeah, he just, it was an ability he had, even on top of his artistic ability as a practical effects guy.
Wow. That's amazing, man.
That's awesome.
So what do you got planned for the rest of this day? We don't want to.
You're probably going to reach it today.
Yeah, we'd love to keep you on all day, but you got stuff to do.
I do. I'm actually, because I planned today as if it was just another day of shooting Onyx content to get out there. So I have a sketch. I was going to do a YouTube collab with another YouTube comedian today in Hollywood somewhere. I have another sketch to shoot over Zoom with Onyx today, and then I have to run to Burbank to pick up some props for an Onyx sketch I'm going to shoot tomorrow.
Wow.
Yeah. So I planned today as if, we were going into the last week and we're going to have to push. So I'm just going to continue to do that because I don't know, the more exposure, again, I don't know how this works when you get close to the goal. It might be that people keep showing up. I'm going to keep thinking of stretch goals and just keep making content for this last week.
Right.
I've already gone so far and burnt the candle at all ends. I might as well, just blow it out.
Keep it going. Yeah.
That's a lot. Is there
Keep
one,
going.
and I know you talked about this guy, but like, is there an actor that you would love to, like, if you got a little extra cash that you could bring, like, is there one kind of actor you would love to bring into this?
Yeah. The main villain in the movie is named Bartok, and he's Onyx's idol. He grew up idolizing this satanic leader for his teachings and his books and his records and all of that. And so he's kind of a surrogate father figure who pretty much betrays and abandons Onyx over the course of the film. And it's this mix of, I want like a guy that's intimidating and really menacing, because even though Onyx is crazy and absurd, I want the threats to feel real. And I also want this character to be able to go off the rails and lose his mind because, spoiler alert, but the bad guy doesn't win. So he's thwarted by Onyx the Fortuitous. So there's this great scene towards the end where the guy's losing it on this numbskull, Onyx. And the actor that comes to mind is Nick Cage.
That'd be amazing.
I mean, I think the budget would have to be above the 500. I think I'd probably have to find an investor just to supply whatever talent fee.
Right.
But I wrote the script to only need Bartok for like 3 days of the shoot. Like he exists in his study and he talks to his assistant a lot. And then she's the surrogate that comes out and talks to us, the Satanist. But Bartok's really only in a handful of scenes in his study, very localized, very easy to shoot. And then he's in the finale, obviously.
Right.
So it'd be like 2 days in the study, maybe 2 days for the finale. But then you're wrapped, Nick. So
that might be doable.
That's awesome.
God, I hope that happens. That's incredible.
We'll see. I mean, if I get the 500 through Kickstarter, maybe that could attract some investors that are like, oh, well, so you're making an indie movie, huh? What can you... And maybe one of them would pony up whatever that fee would be for him for 3 days, 3 or 4 days. Yeah.
He does a lot of stuff. I mean, he's been doing cooler stuff lately.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, Willy's Wonderland, he's silent. He doesn't even have dialogue.
Yeah.
I mean, it looked like a fun movie to make though. So hopefully he'd be attracted to something like this, which I think would also be fun.
Well, let's hopefully get in front of him and hope you get that, man. We really do.
Thank you.
Yeah, Andrew, stay on with us for a second, but thank you guys for showing up, everybody. If you guys want to go donate to Onyx Fortuitous and the Talisman of Souls, go to the
Please
Kickstarter page right now. And if you don't donate today, you still got a week left, so there's a lot of cool things there. Thanks, Andrew, again for coming on. We will see you guys soon.
Yeah,
so
take care, guys. Thanks.
Peace out.